This video is brought to you by PantherGaming.com. Go to the link in the description and use the promo code LateNight to get 10% off of any order on console skins and controller skins. And without further ado, let's get to the video. So this is the first Q&A of 2017. Let's hope that this year goes a lot better than the last year. I have a request for you guys. So people get frustrated because their questions are not picked for the Q&A. And the sad reality is that I get so many questions and I don't want to seem biased, so I actually do have my questions randomly selected for me by a random number generator. Oh my god. The reality of that is that not every single question can be answered because every video gets close to like 100 questions. And so the video would be unrealistically long if I were to answer over 100 questions with every single video. So you guys, in the description, does anybody have possible solutions that I could do so I can maybe some kind of system that I can come up with, some kind of forum maybe, where I can answer lots of questions that people comment or something, like anything. Just if you guys have any ideas of some place where people can just ask their questions and I can answer it like almost instantly, that isn't a social media account that requires people to maybe make a Twitter even if they don't want a Twitter, like just let me know in the comment section if you guys have maybe any ideas. And well, let's kick this Q&A off, the first Q&A of 2017. So for those of you just joining us, the rules of the Q&A are very simple. All you have to do is leave your Halo-related questions in the comment section below, and they may get picked and answered on next week's show. So we're going to kick this off with Butter Creeper, who says, Q&A, do you think it's feasible to go back to the original art style even after they already made the change? I know the lore wouldn't make sense, but I feel that a lot of people would be brought back to the Halo series just because of nostalgia. Mini Q&A. A lot of people, including me, think the newer Halo games aren't very fun. Why do you think this is? Lack of freedom, focus group testers, competitive players, community? So to answer your question, when it comes to the art style, I actually do think there is a lore excuse that they could use to bring it back. So as of right now, the Spirit of Fire is returning to the Milky Way galaxy, right? And for those of you who do not know, the Spirit of Fire was the ship that was kind of like the hub for all of our protagonists in the original Halo Wars, which took place before the original trilogy. The Spirit of Fire got lost in the universe, and all of the people in the ship kind of went into cryostasis, and the plot of Halo Wars 2 is that, oh my god, they've woken up and they're at the Ark from Halo 3. And currently, the year is like, actually I forgot the exact date, but it's a few months after the events of Halo 5. So currently, the Spirit of Fire is on the Ark with very old technology. The old art style, essentially, is on that ship. It's like a little time capsule that opened up on the Ark 7 months after Halo 5. So, the idea is Cortana is now a big, dumb, stupid robot overlord, and she now has control over all technology, because that's not a trope in sci-fi that's been done to death. But here we go. Alright, we'll play ball 343. Well, could we then potentially see the Spirit of Fire after the events of Halo Wars 2 re-enter the Milky Way galaxy and be like, oh my god, this is like a generic sci-fi AI takeover story. Hey guys, since all of your technology is obsolete because of the AIs, why don't you use some of ours? And it's like, and it's all the old technology, all the old art style, like maybe Master Chief's suit because it's got like a punch in the face. It's kind of like malfunctioning maybe a little bit just because it's been so long since he's had proper repairs done to it. Maybe he has to don some like old school armor, maybe even prototype armor that they modify to look kinda like his old armor. And just overall come up with like excuses to bring back the original art style, that after they defeat Cortana and whatever, like, let's just kind of keep this old art style and move away from the other one that people generally do not like. That's just my thoughts, though, and I think it could work if 343 wanted to. And so to answer your mini Q&A, there are lots of reasons people don't like the newer games. But that being said, there are also a lot of reasons people do like the newer games. There are people that do enjoy the newer games over the old ones. And before people are like, who are these people? Let me tear them apart. Like, guys, it's their opinion. They're allowed to like them if they want. For some people, though, for the people who maybe don't like these newer games, there are a lot of differences between the series that they grew up with. Bungie's Halo games were never very deep. The stories, they were more of like a power fantasy. Almost every decision in the story was done to be awesome. Like, for example, Joseph Staten said in this commentary for Halo 2 that was included in Halo 3 that pretty much whenever they ran into like a moment where it's like, oh, like this is kind of weird, like what are we gonna do here? Like Sergeant Johnson coming back, for example. Like Johnson is pretty cool, and it would be awesome to have him in Halo 2, but he technically died in CE. So what do we do to kind of like, that's classified, and it's like, oh, ha ha ha, that's funny. Okay, he's back, but then, of course, like, the books would later expand on that. But the point being, whenever Bungie ran into a problem where they're like, well, this is, like, a really cool thing that we want to do, but how do we, like, explain it in the game without seeming like, disorganized or contrived? Well, they'll dismiss it with humor. Like, for example, in Halo CE, when the Chief suddenly teleports, and it's like, oh, now he's upside down. Ha, 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 you know, and he, like, falls. It's like, wait, how did Cortana teleport? Like, he's in her head now. What? And it's kind of like it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't matter because, like, Bungie dismissed it with humor. Ha, 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 ha. And, like, that's kind of the way that Bungie always wrote their stories, is they never really focused on the tiny details. It was always about making you feel awesome, being lighthearted, being just, like, so cool. Like, this is an awesome story, isn't it? Where with 343, it's a lot more character-driven. It's a lot more slow and, like, arguably a lot more complex because it's including elements of the lore into its narrative. And for people, they're like, oh, man, like, this isn't what Halo is. Halo's about making me feel awesome. And a lot of people miss that. And then also there are certain gameplay elements. People miss the lack of sprint and the slower paced gameplay of the previous Halo games. They miss kind of like the way that Halo was almost, like, using the term time capsule again in a different sense, like Halo was almost this little time capsule of how games used to play before aiming down the sights, like the era of Doom and Half-Life before we really started to adopt the iron sight. Every game needs iron sights. People were like, I kind of like how, like, Halo still to this day refuses to give in and is still doing the hipfire thing. And sadly, Halo 5 now, like, they're like, oh, not you too, Halo. So there are different elements of Halo that people dislike that, you know, it's moving towards, but hopefully in the future we'll find some kind of common ground and make the perfect Halo game for everyone. Although that's a bit unrealistic. So moving on to our second question, Random Guy, ODST46, says, Q&A, should the Warden Eternal have 4 animal-like forms? I only think one of them, like such as the gorilla form. So in my opinion, this should probably extend to the rest of the Prometheans. Alright, so the Prometheans, in my opinion, are a great idea that sadly, like the Flood, were never really capitalized on as well as they could have been. Now that being said, in my personal opinion, Halo 3, Bungie nailed it. They figured it out, they did something unique with the Flood, and the idea was like changing forms and how kind of dynamic they were. Like, they didn't feel like, oh, a little spider thing goes over to a corpse and the corpse gets up and just like runs at you and then you shoot it and it's dead. Like, it's very uncreative in Halo CE and Halo 2, the way that the Flood were handled, in my opinion. Like, there were some interesting things, like you had the different forms and you had the carrier forms, which when you pop them, they send out little infection forms, which are, oh my god, like more enemies, gameplay. But with Halo 3, I really feel that they made the Flood actually a lot of fun to fight in their own right, as opposed to like, oh, this is like a fun little Flood segment, but I wouldn't want it to be its own level. Looking at you, the library from Halo CE. And so with the Prometheans, I'm really hoping that Halo 6 acts as 343's Halo 3, where they finally sit down and they're like, okay, enough dicking around. We need to make the Prometheans fun. We can't keep playing it safe. Halo 4's problem was they were a little bit too ambitious with the Knights, and the problem was the Knights were so good in the field that they kind of like, they sustained themselves. Like, they had shields that would recharge like the elites, so technically they kind of had like a form of regenerating health. Why would they need the Watchers then? They also teleported around and were able to keep themselves safe. Again, why would they need the Watchers with their like shielding and stuff? Then also they had shotguns, they had insta-kill abilities, they were able to lob grenades at you, like all of these things. They were also able to do these like 1,000-yard dashes where they just like leapt across the map at you at light speed and were able to like kill you instantly. Like, the Knights were great. And then the problem is you have the Crawlers, where it's like, well, what do we do with the Crawlers? The Knights pretty much serve every role on the battlefield, where The grunts certainly can't fill the role of the jackals, and the jackals can't fill the role of the grunts, and the elites can't fill, like, vice versa, and like so on and so forth. Like, every enemy had a weakness and a strength, where with the knight, it was pretty much only strengths and no weaknesses. So the problem was that the Watchers and the Crawlers didn't really have their own roles. They were just kind of there to be shot at. And the Watcher was made super annoying to overcompensate for how useless it kind of was. Like, the Watcher, the problem was, well, you've got to make it useful, but the thing is, the Knight is already good on its own. So the only next step is making it more useful, like, and so you end up making something that is actually kind of annoying because it's so useful. It's aiding an enemy that is already able to sustain itself. And so it's arguably very annoying. And then with Halo 5, now nobody is interesting to fight. I mean, except for the Knights still, in my opinion. But with the Knights, I think that they found a better common ground. I do actually think the Knights are fun to fight in Halo 5. I like that they have the two glowing weak points on the sides of them, and when you pop one of them, you actually do get a second to get an insta-kill. So it's like, it's fun. It's kind of like why I also like Gears of War combat, despite not liking third-person cover-based shooters, because Gears of War at least even makes reloading fun, because you have that little mini game where you can, I think it's called active reload, where if you hit the reload button and then you hit reload at the right moment, you'll actually reload instantly and get like double damage for your weapon for a short period of time. So it makes even reloading have like a fun little mini game to it. And it's like with the Knights, you know, you get that little moment where you can get an insta-kill in there. But overall, now with Halo 6, what I'm hoping is that, so the thing is, the Prometheans are made up of lots of metal parts, right? Like, lots of metal things. Like, okay, 343, you really like your floaty bits, right? Like, despite, you know, the Bungie games didn't have a lot of Forerunner floaty bits. But okay, if you're gonna insist that the Forerunners fucking love floaty bits, love them so much, why don't you embrace the floaty bits? Let's have you blow the arm off of a soldier, and the soldier's like, oh my god, I don't have an arm anymore. So it like, whoosh, like a transformer becomes kind of like a half-assed crawler, and it turns into a new unit or something. Or some of the soldiers are able to like reconstruct themselves into these stationary sniper turrets or something. Like, so the battlefield is constantly changing. Their roles are constantly changing based off of what's going on. So they're not all just standing there. Or if they do need vehicles, they just use human vehicles because the developers didn't give them any Forerunner vehicles. Like, change it up, make them interesting to fight, you know? Those are just my thoughts on it. So yeah, like, different forms I think would improve not just the Warden, but everybody. So Mario Dumas says, Halo Q&A. I was thinking about this idea. What if 343 added more vehicles and variants of other Halo games to the multiplayer and Forge, like the Halo 2 Spectre Shadow, the Halo 3 Brute vehicles, the Pelicans, Phantoms, you know, or Spirits, and the Halo 3 Elephant, the Scarab, the Hornet Falcon. I think Halo has a great variety of vehicles, however, most cannot be used just because they're very large. Perhaps in the future, they can add them into a new game mode with maps as large as Battlefield. Greetings from Mexico, sorry if I made some grammatical error, I hope you got the idea. No problems, hey, and for future reference, guys, like, look, if English isn't your first language, don't apologize for misspeaking or whatever. Like, it's not your fault you don't speak the same language as me, and vice versa. So, to answer your questions, I do think it would be freaking awesome if they were able to add all of the vehicles, but, like, the thing also to worry about is how do you balance those within the sandbox? Because as of right now, there are a lot of vehicles in Halo 5. Well, I guess a lot of reskins of vehicles with different traits, but there are a ton of vehicles right now in Halo 5, and arguably some are a little bit unbalanced, like some of the Wasp variants, because you can get them so easily. So the danger of having so many vehicles in a future Halo game is that some could become unbalanced. So something like the Spectre from Halo 2, that was the Covenant's version of the Warthog. It had a driver's seat, it had a gunner seat, and it had a passenger seat. In my opinion, the Spectre was not as useful as the Warthog, because the Warthog had a hit scan machine gun turret, like where the Spectre, it had projectile-based plasma weapons. So it's like, I'd rather have something that will instantly hit you, like no matter where you are, with no bullet travel travel time at all than the Spectre, where it's arguably only useful at certain distances. So having like certain vehicles like that, which kind of have their roles filled already by better vehicles, like they end up becoming useless, which is unbalanced. Like with Halo 5, there are a lot of vehicles that aren't very balanced because it's like, why is this here? Like there's no point to this. So it's kind of like, I don't want some vehicles to be brought back only to be made useless because other vehicles in the sandbox already do that thing's job, but slightly better. That being said, what we could do is maybe rework the way certain vehicles act within Halo's sandbox, like dramatically revise the gameplay of certain things so that we can bring back classic vehicles and stuff. And personally, I'd love to see like Pelicans and Phantoms and stuff actually finally be drivable. And, you know, to touch on what you said with Battlefield, I would love to see some kind of 32 versus 32 big team battle on large scale Halo maps, but sadly this is more of like a, well, what can the Halo engine handle? And also importantly, if the Halo engine can handle it, can the Xbox One like handle it? Would the Xbox One be capable of running a game mode like that at that scale? So it's, you know, it's kind of like, right now, all of these ideas are incredible, but would hardware be able to sustain an idea like that? Like the Frostbite engine that Battlefield uses can do all that stuff because the engine has been specifically tuned over the course of years to be able to support large-scale warfare, where Halo is only now, with Halo 5 Warzone, beginning to dabble in larger scale conflicts. So we've had Big Team Battle, which is like, wow, 8v8. Then we had Invasion, which, wow, this is a little bit bigger than Big Team Battle. Then we have Warzone, which, oh wow, like 12 versus 12 with AI, with maps that are larger than anything in Halo previously, and all of these vehicles and things going on. Like, so they would need to continue to kind of upgrade the Halo engine to be able to support larger scale battles and stuff, but I do think it could become a reality if they continue to support larger scale aspects of the engine, like being able to support more players online, more vehicles, like bigger player spaces, and so on and so forth. But without rambling, I hope that answers your question. Ted Matthew I have no idea how to pronounce that name, and I am so sorry. Like, names are the worst, by the way, with me. So I don't seem offensive, I'm not going to try to do it, but I think one thing to make Halo 6 have a more Halo 3 feeling is by starting with advertising. Halo 5 made the Spartans look overpowered. Don't need to try hard, and mostly it's just similar to Marvel movies, which I hated. But in Halo 3, the humans looked vulnerable. In the Believe advertisement, with Chief as the only source of hope, but also was in the hands of a brute chieftain. We need to see that our heroes are not perfect superheroes, because that is just not very compelling, and we can't relate to perfection. We like to see conflict, a real struggle, but one that no one can think that we can overcome. I think that if 343 put the emotion and desperation that was in Bungie's Believe ad, Halo 6 would have the same amount of excitement. Well, this is a question that I have a few opinions about, so I do agree with some elements of your question, but I also disagree with others. I think that Halo 5's marketing was incredibly depressing. Like, remember the advertisement where people were dying everywhere, like buildings were crumbling, and then Chief dies at the end of the trailer. Like even Chief dies. Like, it's very depressing. And then remember Hunt the Truth? Like, just how hard that was to see what Benjamin Giraud was going through. Like, Hunt the Truth was an incredible piece of advertising, by the way. I love Hunt the Truth, and even if you aren't a Halo fan, and even if Hunt the Truth ultimately had nothing to do with the final game, I would still say, like, to some sci-fi fans, like, hey, like, if you don't like Halo, just listen to Hunt the Truth. It's a fun little science fiction story about this reporter who's uncovering this conspiracy by the government where they, like, abducted children and turned them into super soldiers, and nobody knows. So it's, like, I really liked Hunt the Truth. I found that Halo 5's marketing was incredibly depressing and incredibly kind of, like, weighty. Like, I think of, like, the, you were supposed to save us all, like, Chief's statue is in ruins, like, Chief's about to be killed by Locke, like, everything's on fire. Like, Halo 5's marketing was very much incredibly depressing, in my opinion. And for some of like the more superhero-y aspects, Bungie very much tried really hard to make Master Chief the ultimate badass. Like, in fact, that was the whole point. They constantly reiterated in interviews and documentaries and stuff that, well, the point is to make you feel like a superhero. In fact, actually, superhero is a word that they used in one of the Halo 2 Vidocs when they were describing who Master Chief is as a character. They were like, he's kind of like a superhero. So I don't think it's necessarily bad that they're making them look like superheroes. I think if what you mean is they literally are looking like superheroes like Thor or something, which, when it comes to the Halo 5 first cutscene, I can definitely see some Avengers stuff there. The way they're, like, running down the mountain and killing, like, hundreds of people, and, like, it's all one continuous shot, and it's doing very grandiose, like, lots of strings, lots of horns and brass, and, like, you know, it's an Avengers-style soundtrack, and they're doing the one continuous shot thing, like Avengers Age of Ultron at the beginning. They even did the kind of crappy, like, title card, the way in Avengers Age of Ultron, Tony Stark grabbed the Loki scepter, and then it's just like, boom, Avengers Age of Ultron, and it's just like this awkward, like, just cut to the title with, like, no transition. And in Halo 5, they jump out of the Pelican, and then it's just Halo 5 Guardians there. Like, no transition effect or anything. It's just suddenly, like... They paused the movie, like, put, like, black background, Halo 5 Guardians, and then they resumed the movie. Like, there's no transition. It was very kind of awkward looking, and they did that in Avengers. And the reason that I do think that it was inspired by Avengers is due to the fact that 343 saw Avengers Age of Ultron and was trying to, like, recapture some of that magic, specifically because they went as far as to even do that shitty title card, like, with the lazy transition. No, those are, like, just some of my opinions, but I think what's going on currently is that, well, 343 needs to market the, like, Spartans as these awesome superheroes, like, these awesome badasses. The issue is seeing them actually being badasses without your permission. Because with Bungie, for the most part, they were good at making sure that whenever something awesome was about to happen, you were put in charge. So with Bungie, for example, like if we take CE, okay, so Bungie during the development of CE, Chief never did anything action-y in a cutscene. Like with the Flood reveal, the minute the Flood were a threat, like, I mean, yeah, Chief kind of like stalked around and was like, ooh, like, let's put this thing in my helmet and see what's going on. But the minute the Flood burst into the room, like, you're in control now. You're the awesome person who's killing all of the Flood. And in Halo 2, they definitely fumbled a little bit by making Chief do some awesome things where it's like, I wish I could do that. Like, that could have been a cool level set piece. But then in Halo 3, they rectified it. Like in Halo 3, where you literally blow up the Scarab yourself. It doesn't just blow up in a cutscene with Chief dramatically. You can dramatically walk away now as the Scarab. Like, you did it. You're the badass. Where with 343's games, they are having a very difficult time of just letting you be the badass. Like, that entire opening cutscene, why can't I be doing that? The gameplay allows it. All the things that they're doing, Buck charges through a piece of rock at some, like Spartan charge. I think one of them does a ground pound. No, that was actually Buck that did the ground. Like, I can do that in the game. Vale jumps onto a Phantom. I'm sure if it flew low enough, I could hop in there myself. Like, the things that they were doing in the cutscenes, they could have been part of a level if they wanted it to, but they weren't. I think of also the Master Chief fight sequence where they're like, look, it's blue team, and they're chasing him and they're jumping through portal. Like, why couldn't that have been a level sequence where you're like having to like time jumps and jump through it like as a race to catch up to blue team? That could have been a really cool little level sequence. Like, why couldn't I have been in control of that? Like, there are, and then with 343's love of scripted first-person cutscenes that you cannot skip in any way, shape, or form. And I'm thinking of like Call of Duty style moments where it's like, oh no, Chief fell over. Oh no, the bomb's over there. Right trigger, left trigger, right trigger. So he can crawl over to the bomb and then blow it. Like, you know, and then the end of Halo 5 where it's like, oh no, Locke fell. Is he gonna stop it? Yes, of course he is, because this is scripted. I'm not in control of this moment.
I'm coming, Master Chief. We're gonna get you out of there. I'm so cool. We're gonna stop the robots. Wait, no. What? What's that? No. I'm not doing this. Game. Game, give me back the controller. Game. No. I wanted... No, let me punch the laser. Stop. Can I please do this? Oh my god. The game's beating the game for me. Game, if you want me to stand still, I can do that. You don't have to literally stand still for me. Just give me back the controller. Can I at least move around? This is taking a while. Oh my god, I have no control. What has gaming become?
Like, just bullshit stuff like that, where it's like, just give me control. Like, the Guilty Spark boss fight in Halo 3 is pathetic. Like, it's not even a boss fight, but you know what? At least I could blow him up. At least it wasn't done in some Call of Duty-esque scripted bullshit where it's like, oh my god, Chief is like flailing his arms around because he's falling, and then he grabs hold of a ledge and hoists himself up and punches Guilty Spark in the face. Like, and it's just completely out of my control. Like, I'm hoping that 343 reevaluates how much, like, freedom they're giving the player or not giving the player in the future, because I do think that those are some aspects that are it's why I do think that people are starting to feel like the Spartans are becoming superheroes, because, well, now you're being detached. Like, you're no longer the superhero. But, you know, those are just my opinions. We're going to move on to a question from the Almighty, who says, Halo Q&A, what do you think about enhanced mobility in Halo? Personally, I think that some of them should be removed and replaced. Sprint with just like a faster, maybe default running, walking animation. Also the ability to hover in the air, able to aiming down the sights without like scopes, and sliding should be removed because it feels like they're just ripping off Titanfall. And also it would be separate, and it would separate Halo from other FPS games. Now, I don't have a problem with ADS if there is a scope. I just don't understand aiming in weapons such as the needler and suppressor, and even the sword. Who aims with needles that home in? Sorry for the typos and misspellings. I live in Finland, so yeah. Thanks for reading this. Hope it makes it into the Q&A. So to answer your questions, personally, I enjoy the gameplay of Halo 5. I do think as a shooter, it plays very well, minus the awkward way that they handled the entire aiming system, like with the aim acceleration and the aim assist and the way that they bounce off of each other, and it feels very awkward and clunky in a lot of areas just to aim at a person. But outside of that, I do think the core gameplay works very well. Now, if it plays like a Halo game, I do think for the most part it does play like a Halo game at its core, some of the principles about it with the way that it was designed. But that's not to say I'm entirely happy with all of the decisions made. So when it comes to the hovering in the air and the aiming down the sights with all the weapons, so in order to hover in the air, everything needs to have an aiming down the sights thing, like a smart scoping thing. That way, with every weapon, you can always be able to hover in the air. The hovering in the air, I think, is kind of like it's very useful in a lot of situations, but honestly, I think, like, Halo wouldn't lose anything substantial if we just kind of removed it. So if we're removing the hovering, I definitely would like to see smart scoping scaled back. I'm not happy that it gives weapons accuracy buffs, especially automatic weapons like the SMG, the assault rifle, the SOD. Like, no, like, no. And you actually mentioned the sword. That also really puzzled me, because here's the thing, like, the sword is very much, in my opinion, a defensive weapon. Its role in the sandbox is defensive. You don't get out the sword and then go running around looking for people. But in Halo 5, the sword actually promotes aggressive play because it speeds up your mobility, and also, if you smart scope with it, you can lunge really far with it. So if you smart scope at a guy, you can actually lunge like across like a room and kill a guy. So it promotes the action of just flying around, like out of your little position that you've hunkered yourself down in, and just finding enemies and cutting them down. It's like, no, that's like, like, you move really fast in Halo 5, so moving even faster and having a thing that kills people instantly, like, no, that's dumb. Don't do it. Like, that goes against the point of the sword as a weapon. I don't like that. And I do think it is very bizarre that certain weapons have the scoping ability, because these weapons, like the SMG, they're supposed to be designed for close-range engagements. That's the point of it. It's a close-range weapon. So giving it aiming down the sights and tightening up the hipfire spread so it can hit things at like medium to semi-long range, like that defeats the purpose. It kind of like waters down their roles within the sandbox. And it's like, no, like, we don't want that. Close-range weapons should not have a scope ability, like an aiming down the sights ability, because you're using them in close range. You should be focused on killing the guy in front of you, not, like, scoping in with a battle rifle for your accuracy so you can get a better shot on the guy. Like, no, keep the scoping stuff to the ranged weapons, and keep the hip fire to the close, like the medium range, close range. And overall, like, in my personal opinion, I do think sprint works very well in Halo 5. I do think it was well balanced. That being said, I do think there are some problems with it, mainly the Spartan charging. I don't think that that's fair, that you can sprint into a room and before anyone can even react, I can charge at them and have the game automatically lock me onto him and hover, like, fly at him with no way for him to defend himself, charge into him, drain his shields, and then instantly get a headshot with my Magnum. That's very unfair. It catches people off guard, and I think it's very unbalanced in my opinion. Overall, like, you know, and the clambering, I don't really like the clambering because, well, yes, like, crouch jumping is kind of, like, archaic as a system where it's like, yeah, why not just, like, press a button and hoist yourself up? Why do I need to do this complex crouch jumping thing? Crouch jumping punishes you if you fail. Like, it punishes you. So it makes you get good, for lack of a better term, at the game. And so with clambering, it just, like, makes things a little bit easier. And the problem is, I also do think because of the lack of punishment with clambering, it also means that, like, people get around the maps a lot faster than they did before, where if there were penalties to things like crouch jumping, the way it wouldn't automatically lock onto a thing and let you hoist yourself up with no effort, like, if you miss a thing, like, lots of people will miss crouch jumps, so it will kind of slow down the matches a little bit, because people won't be executing these precise jump maneuvers effortlessly because they can just press the jump button near a ledge. Like, if that makes any sense, there would be more room for error within Halo 5's gameplay if there was no clamber, and that's why I don't really like it, because error is a good thing in some areas because it would help pace the game and just, like, there are obstacles and punishments if you fail to execute something because it keeps the game flow paced well. Man, that I kind of fell apart at the end there. I just got words, but I hope that answers your question. So we're gonna end this Q&A with a question from Baguio Zhao. I hope I pronounced that right in some non-offensive way. Please forgive me. But the question reads, Dear Late Night Gaming, I just bought Halo 5 in October, and personally feel that the rec system is fine. As my first ever Halo game, I just rolled with it, as I never experienced any other Halo multiplayer system, and although I hear many complaints about it, I never understood why it was so hated. I think that maybe as a noob at Halo 5, I only play Firefight, I suck at PvP. Being placed against OP weapon variants that the better players in the match get using strats more, uses strats more. A Nornfang can one-shot, but if you pull an active camo, remember it costs less Rex, you could sneak up and assassinate that son of a bitch. Rex don't mean much if logic can counter each and every Rec. Could you do a video comparing the best multiplayer system of Halo in your opinion to the Rex system in Halo 5 and just why it's so hated? If you have already discussed this in a previous video, send me the link. So, when people hate the rec system, I think what they primarily mean is they hate the random number generator elements of it, because the weapon variants, I actually like. I think the weapon variants are cool, and I do think the idea of Warzone is cool, the way you can actually call in different things like active camos and stuff. That being said, I do think there are certain weapons where it's like, Halo's sandbox was balanced so that in a way where you wouldn't be spawning with this, like the Spartan Laser. So when you do spawn with the Spartan Laser in Warzone, it's arguably a little bit overpowered, and in a way that just will make it a rec level 7. Like, no, that's not the point. Like, I will get to rec level 7, and when I get it, no vehicle will be safe from me. Like, that's still, there's problems there. But, okay, so when it comes to the rec system, what people don't like is there's no way to know what you're going to get. Now, you can guess, like, well, this is going to give me more legendaries. This is going to give me more uncommons and commons and stuff. But as a whole, it is completely up in the air what thing you're going to get when you open it. And for Halo primarily, now see, before Halo 5, there were no weapon loadout things or whatever. You didn't earn weapons. What you earned was armors, and you could customize everything from your feet to your chest to each individual shoulder arm and or from each individual arm piece and shoulder pad, and you could customize your visor and your helmet. You could even attach stuff to your helmet. The customization was very complex, and Halo only gave you cosmetics. It wasn't actually really until Halo 4 when the idea of, well, what if you can earn weapons as well to spawn with, when that started to become a thing with the Halo franchise. And with Halo 5, they went even further with the Warzone game mode, where it's all about earning weapons that you can spawn with. And the problem with Warzone is, so let's say that you start out Halo 5 from ground one. You go into a match of Warzone, player versus player. You have nothing, 0 things. You have no recs at all. You only have your assault rifle and magnum. Well, the problem here right now is that, well, I mean, I think you have a storm rifle and a scatter shot and bolt shot or something. Sorry, I forgot. It's been so long. But the point is, you are objectively worse off than everybody else. Everybody has Norn fangs and all this sort of stuff. And so your argument of, well, you could just pull out an active camo, yeah, that's incredibly viable. You could pull out an active camo. But the problem is, there's no way to actually get the camo with well, okay, well, all I need to do is get 10 headshots in a match of Warzone and I'll be gifted active camo. There's no way to know when you're gonna get the active camo. So the problem is that some people are worse off than others because they don't have proper weapons and equipment to combat other weapon variants, and they don't know when they're gonna get them. They don't know when they're gonna get those counters because it's all up in the air. It's all up to chance. That's the problem with the rec system. That is why it is so unbalanced, is that you don't know if you're even going to get something that can counter some of these higher rec levels, some of these higher rec variants that other people have gotten because they've been playing longer than you. And to make matters even worse, you can get everything that you want anyways, with money, with real money. So for me, with Halo 5, I remember actually being a little bit upset because my first Warzone match, I jumped in, I was like, yes, I had a buddy who also really likes the Halo series. But here's the thing, where I was jumping into Warzone and I was opening up gold packs and stuff, my buddy is super lazy and he didn't feel like doing that, so he dumped $250 into the game day one, and he had everything. Everything. He hadn't even played a match yet. And he just dumped money into the game and he got access to everything. Everything before me. And it's oh, well, that sucks. He now has the benefit. He has the objective advantage over me because he spent money and I refused to. And that's another problem with the rec system. And so it's just the rec system is very poorly handled, in my opinion. I do think that weapon variants need to be unlocks. You can't just leave everything up to chance. That's not a substitution for a proper weapon distribution system like Call of Duty or Battlefield or something. That will literally only create more problems than it solves because of what I said. You don't know when you're going to be able to get something that can counter these awesome rec variants. You have no way of knowing. But, ultimately, those are just my opinions. So this was a little bit longer, guys. I hope that I was able to answer the questions interestingly. I hope that you guys enjoyed the different but still Halo-related gameplay. If you want me to continue doing stuff like this, I will continue to do it. Maybe stuff from other games, like Halo mods and other video games and stuff, or different types of Halo games. Just let me know in the comment section below, guys. And ultimately, enjoy your week and expect some videos coming up very soon.